So we were talking last time about the Jews of Izmir on our journey through Jewish communities, and we spoke about some of the Rabbanim. We're talking about the 18th and 19th century, and we mentioned some of the Rabbanim that wrote certain books and how Izmir became a bigger place due to economic growth and the establishment of printing houses and so on and so forth. We should know that there was always a strong connection between the Jews of Turkey and the Jews of Izmir to Eretz Israel, in particular, especially Arav Chaim Ben Yaakov Abulafia. He died in 1744. He reinitiated the establishment of Jewish life in Tiberias, in Tveria. He made a deal with the governor of that area in a condition that he will be able to bring families, because the guy was smart. He said the Jews will come, business will come, and so we allowed them. Jews were not allowed to. Now, regardless of what some people would tell you, or what the drive-by media would like to tell you, and some other lowlife will tell you, Jews for many years were not allowed to. Not that they forgot about the land of Israel. They weren't allowed to live in Israel. They weren't allowed. They needed a permission. They had a quota of how many Jews. And there's what so-called Palestinians, they came because the Jews came, so they came for business. The land was empty. And there were tribes of Bedouins. The Palestinians is an invention. There's no such thing in a Palestinian nation. There's no such thing as Palestine. Don't let anybody fool you. Look at history. Until the point, most of the Arabs in Israel, if there were any, were a bunch of Bedouins. Some of them came from Saudi Arabia for business. And the British, the Turks too, but less. But the British put a closure on Eretz Israel. No Jews were allowed to enter. It's not because the Jew ever forgot about Israel, because they weren't allowed to. So Arav Chaim Abulafia wrote a lot of books. Established was the driving power behind re-establishing the Jewish community in Tiberias. He was chief rabbi of Izmir between 1720 and 1740. He came back to Tveria with his students, and he basically made sure that Jews will be in Tveria. But Tveria was not, again, they were not Palestinians. There's no such thing. They were Bedouin tribes. Bedouins, no Palestinians. And the supporter, of course, the main supporter of that was the Jews from Izmir, but mainly the Jewish community of Istanbul. Arav Chaim Modai, which I told you at the time, when Arav Natan Adler brought him to learn with him, to teach him the correct pronunciation. The Sephardic pronunciation is the correct one. As said Rav Natan Adler. After that, of course, he did not allow anybody to daven in front of the Eichal. He was a huge Talmid Chacham. He wrote the Sefer Chaim Bayad on the Rambam, and so on and so forth. He was born in Tzfat. He was the chief rabbi of Izmir between 1776 and 1793. Afterwards, he came back to Tzfat. Arav Yosef Chazan, 1741-1820, settled down in Hebron in 1813, and later on he came to Yerushalayim, and he became the Rishon Etzion, the chief rabbi of Israel. At the beginning of the 19th century, the more traditional education in Izmir started to decline. The numbers of yeshivot was in decline as well, and the students as well. In 1847, there was a person by the name of Avraham Enriquez, and he re-established, he made a new Talmud Torah, which became quite large around the year 1871. 1878 is a very important time. The first school of Kol Yisrael Chaverim, also known as Alliance. Alliance was not a great achievement. It came from France, and their goal was to secularize the Jews. Not only in Turkey, in all places. In Iran or Paras, they did catastrophes over there. They destroyed. They introduced secular learning and so on and so forth. It was a very bad thing. They came to the Sephardic Jews and tried to de-religionize them, to make them secular. After that, a year after that, it was first for boys, then it was for school for girls. They had a vocational school for girls. And in 1885, there were 4 Jewish schools for boys. In those schools, there were about 2,500 Talmidim, students. And school for girls with about 500 girls in the schools. These are secular schools. They're not the regular Talmud Torah. Most of the people send their kids to Talmud Torah. The first Jewish hospital opened up in Izmir in 1805. And in 1840, the Rothschild family from Vienna made this hospital bigger and really supported it for many years. It was closed in 1911, and in 1914, Jewish hospital was happening in a different district of Izmir. What's interesting about this is that after this hospital was closed in 1911, they tended to be into a residential area. People lived there. My mother was born and raised in that place. And many stories I heard about this place. However, nobody ever occupied the morgue. It was always closed. Nobody wanted to live there. But they lived there. Today, my mother told me there was only a facade left from that area. The outside, the inside is all in ruins. It's a very interesting place to be. Very interesting place to be. In the 19th century, there were many Jewish organizations in Izmir. For example, they had a Bikur Cholim, then they had Bikur Cholim Shel Nashim, going to visit sick people and women who are sick and so on. And they had a Chevra Kadisha and Chevra Kadisha for men. And the Chevra Kadisha for men was in charge of maintaining the cemeteries. The cemeteries, they have some ancient cemeteries over there. However, with the expansion of the city, slowly the cemeteries turned into neighborhoods, for non-Jews, of course. And they're all gone. Families who were in need received financial support from a charity organization called Ozer Dalim. And then they had Achnasat Orchim. And they had Keilot also, they have shuls also. The Achnasat Orchim, Izmir was a place where a lot of people came and go from many places in Europe and the Middle East and so on and so forth. So that charity organization, it's called Achnasat Orchim, was in charge and giving guests that came to the town a place to sleep and food to eat. We don't have that. If a stranger comes from Yehovitsville to New York and asks you, I just came, I landed from the airport, I need a place to stay, a place to eat. Is there anyone? What would you do? We don't have that. But that's not something to be proud of. When I say that we don't have community, I really mean we don't have communities nowadays. Maybe some people like Satmars and places like that, but other than that, there's nothing. Community without Bikur Cholim. A community without, there are sick people. We have here next to LIJ, North Shore, this, that, the other thing. There are sick people. There are people, women who give birth. Is anybody taking care of them? Oh, we leave it for the Satmars to come and do it. A community without a Chevra Kadisha. A community without Achnasat Orchim, I don't think is entitled to call itself a community. There were organizations to took care of poor people, of orphans. It was a very common thing. There were organizations that took care of Achnasat Kala. My great-grandmother was one of the heads of this thing. Her job was to do Achnasat Kala, especially for brides who did not have the means. So in order not to chas v'shalom have a kala disgrace that she doesn't have linen and this and that, they would supply them. People would donate and they will go and arrange this. We don't have this. We don't care. I don't know how Jewish really we are. There are people who are weak. They can't afford the basics. Guys, especially today, that guys learning kollel, and they come from families who are Torah people. They don't have money to have such. So why are you going to let a kala enter without appropriate linen and clothing and a dress and some chest to put something or a table? Who would pay for the wedding? So those people would arrange that. I remember stories from my grandmother, and my mother told me about my great grandmother. They would go to the women, and this one would donate yards of material. This one would donate this one, and the other one would donate some dishes, and they would make like a big shower, and they would give it to the kala, and they would make parties. And when they cut the material for the kala, they would throw flowers and they would throw candy to make this kala, this poor kala, happy, not to be embarrassed. And it was a big thing. They'll make a big party of that. Dafka for poor girls. Look at the magnitude of these people. When there was achnasat kala like that, from a family who is not Baalat Emtzaim, who doesn't have the means, the rabbi of the shul, they used to have hats like the Rishon LeZion, like chief rabbi in Israel, those hats like this. That all the regila of the chief rabbis and the Sephardic chief rabbis in Israel was taken from the Chacham Bashis, from the rabbis in Turkey. Any rabbi in Turkey had a upper coat with a little embroidery here, and he had the hat on him. That was the sign of a rabbi. Not like today. So the rabbi will go and will take his hat, and the gabbai of the shul will put like a piece of lace or cloth on top, and he would walk in the shul, and he would say, okay, we have achnasat kala, everybody will take money, we'll lift it and put it inside. Nobody would know what it is. And the rabbi would remove his hat for this kala, so they collect money. It's a beautiful thing. Which rabbi will do this today? Which one? Matan Baseter was a big thing. I know my father told me that. Matan Baseter, this one knew that this one is not. They will make hush, hush, mash, mash. Nobody would know. All of a sudden they sent to not third party, like fifth party. They will give people money not to embarrass them. But they know they need, they don't have anything. They wish to do it. My grandmother was quick. My mother's mother, she was quick. She used to work very fast. She had a neighbor who was a little shvacha maisa. She was like a slowpoke, very slow. She couldn't make things fast. So in order for her husband, especially for Shabbat, so the husband to come home and not to embarrass that, my great grandmother used to tell my grandmother, Clarika, ayudale. Clara, her name was Clara, go help her. My grandmother will go, she will cook, she will straighten up the house, and the husband will come home, and his wife will not be embarrassed, and the husband will be happy. We do this today. Neighbors, when they live by, they used to send to each other, let's say this one is known to make eggplants. They will send to each other food, they will taste, and it shares, and we don't have this today. We close ourselves in the houses, we don't care. We lost our Jewish image. We look externally Jewish, internally we're not. There were people who were sick and needed money. There were an organization that would do that as well. Some of the expenses for Talmud Torah and hospitals were financed from donations that they made, or from the income that they made from a lottery. They had a community lottery, and that lottery was run by the Gemilut Chasadim organization. And they would make a lottery, and everybody will be. Lottery is a good way to do so. The Jews receive some donations also to buy new lots for cemeteries, and so on and so forth. Big donors like Alexander Sidi, Nissim Crispin, and so on and so forth. Admon de Rothschild, the Baron Maurice de Hirsch, also for different communal affairs that donated. And that's it, boys and girls, for today. Tomorrow, because my battery is running low, tomorrow we're going to talk about the structure of the community itself. So have a nice day, boys and girls.